Recently, my children's biological mother re-entered their lives, and now they are calling me names. My husband hasn't supported me, so I am filing for divorce. Me, 30-year-old female, has been married to my husband, 34, for 6 years, and he has twins, a boy and a girl. Both of them are 16 now. When we started dating, got married, we went to family therapy, and I made it clear that I was not trying to be their mother or replace their mother. Their mother hasn't been in their life since they were about 8. Life had settled into a comfortable rhythm for me and my family. 6 years of marriage blended seamlessly with my husband's twins. We'd navigated the complexities of step-parenting, finding our own unique groove in the family dynamic. They even started calling me mom when they were around 12. When their biological mother vanished from their lives 8 years prior, I never imagined she would resurface, nor did I anticipate the whirlwind of emotions that would follow. Recently their bio mother came back into their lives and they were really excited. Things were great for about 6 months, and then they started to call me by my real name. That hurt, but it's what they chose to do and I never questioned it. Their excitement at reconnecting with their biological mother was palpable, radiating through the walls of our home. I watched them eagerly await her arrival, their anticipation tinged with a longing that I couldn't quite understand. For 6 months, everything seemed harmonious. They showered her with affection, catching up on lost time and building bridges that had been left in ruins for years. But with her return came a subtle shift, a fissure in the foundation of our family unit. Their once frequent use of the word mom to address me dwindled, replaced with the stark reality of my given name. Each time they uttered it, it felt like a tiny dagger, piercing the carefully constructed facade of familial bonds. I grappled with the hurt, swallowing it down with a forced smile, unwilling to let them see the cracks forming within me. They had a right to reconnect with their biological mother. Yet, the ache of being relegated to my given name echoed in the hollow chambers of my heart. I never questioned their choice, never demanded an explanation for the sudden shift in our dynamic. Instead, I buried my pain. Recently they've been getting very disrespectful. The twins, once the embodiment of innocence and joy, have become agents of chaos. It began subtly, like a whisper on the wind, barely perceptible but impossible to ignore. They chafed against the confines of our household rules, pushing back against the boundaries that had once kept our family unit intact. Curfew became a mere suggestion, a trivial inconvenience to be disregarded at will. Their bedrooms transformed into veritable war zones, strewn with the detritus of their adolescent rebellion, a silent protest against the order I had fought so hard to maintain. But it was their words that cut the deepest, each barb a venomous arrow aimed squarely at my heart. "You're not our real mom," they spat, the words dripping with contempt. I recoiled at the accusation, the weight of their words crushing me beneath their burden. How could they not see the love I had poured into their lives, the sacrifices I had made in the name of family? They're talking back to me, stating that I'm not their real mom, that I'm the reason she left. Which is not true. I didn't meet him until almost a year and a half after she left. That now that she's back they don't need me anymore. 3 weeks ago there was a big blow-up where my stepson called me a bitch. I felt the blood drain from my face, my heart pounding in my chest as I struggled to comprehend the magnitude of his betrayal. In that moment, all sense of reason fled. I snatched his phone from his trembling hands, my fingers trembling with a mixture of rage, and told him to stay in his room until his dad came back, but instead he ran out and went to his mom's. She came over and it was a big argument. She tried to hit me and I pushed her out of my house. My stepdaughter told me if I ever put my hands on her mom again then she'd kick my ass. They both went to their mom's place. In the quiet aftermath of the storm that had torn through the fabric of our once happy home, the memories of happier days lingered like a bittersweet ache in my heart. I cast my mind back to those moments of joy, the simple pleasures that had bound us together as a family. I remember the laughter that had filled our home on lazy Saturday afternoons, the sound of their voices mingling with mine as we shared stories and dreams over bowls of melting ice cream. It was a ritual, our own little tradition born out of love and shared experiences. We would gather around the kitchen table, our faces sticky with sweet indulgence, as we savored each creamy spoonful, the taste of chocolate and vanilla a comforting reminder of the bond that held us together. And then there were the adventures we had shared, the memories we had made on family vacations to Disney World. I can still feel the warmth of their small hands clasped in mine as we navigated the crowded streets, their eyes wide with wonder at the magic that surrounded us. We would spend hours exploring every nook and cranny of the theme park, their laughter ringing out like music in the air as we rode roller coasters and met our favorite characters. But now, in the aftermath of the storm, those happy days felt like a distant memory, a faded photograph tucked away in the recesses of my mind. The joy that had once filled our home had been replaced by a hollow emptiness, a numb detachment that left me feeling adrift in a sea of uncertainty. Gone were the days of chauffeuring them to their various sports and activities, replaced instead by a sense of resignation that weighed heavily upon my shoulders. I would sit in the driver's seat of the car, the radio playing softly in the background, as I waited for them to emerge from the house. But they never came, their absence a stark reminder of the distance that now separated us. And so, with a heavy heart and weary soul, I made the decision to step back, to allow their mother to take on the responsibilities that I had once shouldered alone. I would no longer wake them up for school or ferry them to their extracurricular activities, instead, leaving them to navigate the complexities of their daily lives without my guiding hand. It was a painful decision, one born out of necessity rather than choice. But in the end, I knew that it was the only way forward, a small step towards reclaiming my own sense of self amidst the chaos that threatened to consume us all. And as I watched them disappear into the distance, their figures fading into the horizon like ghosts in the mist, I knew that it was time to forge a new path forward, one that would lead me back to myself. And then came the bombshell, a revelation that shattered the fragile peace that had settled over our fractured family. We were supposed to go to Disney World for their spring break this week, but I canceled everything. I told them and my husband, and I guess they thought I was bluffing. We were supposed to leave Thursday night, and when I didn't start the usual vacation roundup, they were shocked. They started saying I was jealous that their mom came back in their lives, that I'm a horrible person, I'm selfish. There was some name-calling, and my husband was silent. They hurled insults like daggers, each one finding its mark as they lashed out in their pain and confusion. I asked him if he was going to step in, but his response was cold and indifferent, his words a knife twisted in the wound that was already bleeding. He said I was wrong for canceling. And so I stood alone, a solitary figure amidst the wreckage of our shattered dreams. For in that moment, I realized that I was fighting a battle that could not be won, a war of attrition that had already claimed its casualties. I left and went to stay in a hotel. I knew that I could no longer bear the burden of our fractured family alone. With a heavy heart and weary soul, I made a decision born of necessity, a choice to seek solace in the quiet refuge of a hotel room, far removed from the chaos that had consumed our once happy home. I needed time to heal the wounds that had been inflicted upon my soul, time to find the strength to rebuild the shattered remnants of our fractured family. He has been blowing my phone up asking me to come back, and yesterday he told me that their mother disappeared again. His voice, pleading and desperate, pierced the silence like a knife, its sharp edges cutting through the numbness that had settled over me like a shroud. He spoke of their tears, of their cries for forgiveness that fell upon deaf ears in my absence. They too have been calling me, crying and apologizing. In their moment of desperation, they had turned to me, seeking redemption in the arms of the woman who had loved them unconditionally, despite the wounds they had inflicted upon her heart. But, I don't want to do this anymore. I don't feel like I'm part of their family, and they can't just cry and come back now that she disappeared. The love that had once bound us together as a family had been replaced by a sense of resignation, a recognition that our paths had diverged in ways we could never have anticipated. And so, with a heavy heart and tear-streaked cheeks, I spoke the words that would irrevocably alter the course of our lives. I want a divorce, I said. My voice barely above a whisper, as the weight of my decision settled like a stone in the pit of my stomach. I watched as my husband's expression shifted from shock to resignation, his eyes filled with a sadness that mirrored my own. And as I turned to leave, the silence of the empty room echoing in my ears, I knew that there was nothing left to say. In the stillness of the night, as the city outside my window lay shrouded in darkness, I found myself grappling with the weight of my own emotions, the turmoil of my thoughts threatening to overwhelm me. Yes, I knew their mother was manipulating them, twisting their fragile emotions, like a puppeteer pulling the strings of marionettes. I never said otherwise, but even with this knowledge, the sting of their betrayal cut deep, a wound that refused to heal no matter how hard I tried to ignore it. Yes, they are 16 years old. An age teetering on the precipice between childhood and adulthood, but even in their youth they don't have the right to treat me this way. Being 16 doesn't mean you get to be disrespectful and threaten me. Despite the venom that dripped from their lips, I have always been in their corner. I had opened my heart to them, embracing them as my own flesh and blood, despite the absence of a biological connection. I know their feelings matter in this, but I am a person too with feelings that ran just as deep as theirs. And as I stood alone in the darkness, I realized that it was time to reclaim my own voice, to assert my own worth in a world that had seemed determined to diminish it. I am not only considering or moving forward with this divorce. The child acts only took a small part in my consideration, the rest are due to the fact that my husband did not back me up in this. I had always believed that marriage was a partnership, a sacred bond forged in love and mutual respect. But as I watched him stand idly by, his silence a damning indictment of his loyalty, I couldn't help but wonder if our union had been built on shaky ground from the start and that he had never loved me. The realization cuts deep, If I can't count on him to help me navigate this tough situation that we were all going through, then why should I stay? That does not mean that I should be treated the way I was being treated. That is not normal 16-year-old behavior. To threaten me? Call me vile names? I just need time for myself. And yet, even as I acknowledge my own flaws, I cannot shake the feeling of betrayal that lingers like a bitter taste upon my tongue. To be threatened and insulted by those whom I had loved and cared for as my own, it cuts me to the core. A wound that refuses to heal no matter how hard I try to ignore it. And I don't want an apology just because their bio mother ran out on them again. Yes, their mother's sudden disappearance had reignited old wounds, dredging up memories of past betrayals and broken promises. But even as I struggle to make sense of the chaos that surrounds me, I want an apology because they really mean it, and I don't believe anyone can be truly sorry 2 days after their mother vanished again. I do not doubt the sincerity of their words, nor do I question the depth of their pain. But forgiveness cannot be rushed, nor can it be won through empty gestures and half-hearted apologies. I need more than words to heal the wounds that have been inflicted upon my soul, more than empty promises to mend the shattered remnants of our fractured family. I would never just abandon them. But I do need time for myself because my feelings were disregarded. But I am not selfish for needing time for myself, for acknowledging the depth of my own pain amidst the chaos that threatens to consume us all. Yes, I am an adult, but I am also human, with feelings that run just as deep as theirs. And in this moment of vulnerability, I realize that I cannot be the pillar of strength that they so desperately need, not when my own foundation is so fragile and tenuous. As I sit in the dimly lit hotel room, the gentle hum of the air conditioner providing a soothing backdrop to the cacophony of thoughts that swirl within my mind, I find myself grappling with the complexities of human emotion. The events of the past few days weigh heavily on my heart, a burden too heavy to bear alone. I had never asked or expected them to be perfect, for I knew that imperfection was the very essence of humanity. But even in the midst of our flaws and shortcomings, there had always been love, a bond that transcended the trials and tribulations of everyday life. I had never expected them to be the most mature people, but I had hoped that they would at least understand the depth of my pain, the wounds that their words had inflicted upon my soul. They have feelings and so do I. I love them with a fierceness that defies reason. They are my children, my heart and soul woven into the fabric of their being, but this is a very complicated situation. This is not because they called me a bitch. Yes, they called me a bitch. But I have been called worse. I am a woman, strong and resilient in the face of adversity. This is ultimately about my husband not backing me up during this situation, and yes, I am hurt that they called me that I'm allowed to be. It hurts even worse coming from two people who I love dearly and would never hurt or want any harm to come to them. I had always believed that marriage was a partnership, a sacred vow to stand by each other through thick and thin. But as I watch him stand on the sidelines, his silence a painful reminder of his failure to stand up for me, I cannot help but feel a deep sense of betrayal. To all the step-parents navigating the often rocky terrain of blended families, I want to offer a few words of advice from my own perspective. I understand the challenges you face, the emotional roller coaster of loving someone who comes with their own children, and the hurdles you've likely overcome to earn acceptance in their lives. First and foremost, remember that building a family in a blended situation requires teamwork. You and your partner must be on the same page, communicating openly and honestly about your hopes, fears, and expectations. Without this solid foundation of mutual understanding and support, it's easy for resentment and discord to seep in, undermining all the efforts you've made to create a loving and harmonious home. Embrace the unique dynamics of your blended family. Every family is different, and what works for one may not work for another. Be flexible and adaptable, willing to adjust your expectations and approach as needed to accommodate the needs and preferences of all family members. The key is that you and your partner must work together to build a family. It's the only way for things to work out. Otherwise, all of your efforts and all the love you pour in will be useless. Hello, I have been getting a lot of messages asking for an update. I am now in a place to be able to give an update. You can look at my previous post for what this is about. I went back to the house 2 days ago. My husband and I had agreed to sit down and have a long overdue conversation about what had transpired, about the cracks that had begun to form in the foundation of our family. As we sat across from each other in the dimly lit living room, the memories of happier days lingered like ghosts in the corners of my mind. I couldn't help but cast my thoughts back to the countless afternoons spent together as a family, the sun-drenched days filled with laughter and love. But now, as I sat across from my husband, the gravity of our situation pressing down upon us like a leaden weight, I knew that we could no longer ignore the cracks that had begun to form in the foundation of our family. We had a long talk about what happened and how I didn't feel protected by him, and how he knew how disrespectful they were being but didn't stop anything. As I sat across from my husband, the weight of his words settling like a leaden weight in the pit of my stomach, I couldn't help but feel a sense of disbelief wash over me. He said that he still loved his ex, and that's why, pretty much. He spoke of his lingering feelings for his ex-wife, of the fear that had gripped him in the aftermath of her sudden return to their children's lives. He didn't want to do anything for her to leave them again, them as in him and the twins, but that didn't change how he felt about me. I listened in stunned silence, the air heavy with the weight of unspoken truths and unresolved emotions. How could he expect me to believe that his heart still belonged to another, even as he professed his love for me? It was a contradiction that left me reeling, a bitter taste of betrayal that lingered on my tongue. The reality of our situation crashing down around me like a tidal wave, I knew that the happy memories of our past could no longer sustain us. His admission of lingering feelings for his ex-wife was a wound that cut deep, a betrayal that shattered the fragile illusion of our marriage. I told him that I've been there, not her, and how could he still love her, and it was very emotional and there was crying and yelling. I made the decision to move along with the divorce. I spoke to the twins and they cried and said it's their fault and to forgive them and their dad and not to leave. With a heavy heart and a voice thick with emotion, I explained to them that while I still loved them dearly, remaining with their father was not a path I could choose. I reassured them that I would always be there for them, that our bond would endure even in the face of adversity. But I also made it clear that their actions had consequences, that they could not treat people with such disrespect and expect everything to simply return to normal. I told them that as much as I loved them, staying with their dad and in this home was not an option, but I would still love to have a relationship with them if they want, but I am still very much hurt by what happened and would still appreciate a little more time for myself. I did move out and I was staying in a unit in one of my rental properties. Exciting news, I bought my first house. It was a fairly quick process. I'm excited for what's next. I bought my first house ever, and next month I am taking a break from work for a few weeks or the whole month. Maybe 2 or 3, and doing some exploring of the world and healing and finding myself. I lost myself in the twins and my husband and didn't really focus on what I wanted and what made me happy. So I bought tickets again for Disney World. I have also made plans to go to Thailand next month, and from there, I have no clue. I'm doing some spontaneous trips. I have always wanted to see the 7 wonders of the world. Anyway, I am really happy to be getting a break. I told the kids I would love to have them over for dinner when I get settled into my new place. I do feel bad about canceling their trip to Disney, so I am thinking about funding a trip for them to go this summer for their 17th birthday. Just not with me. I'm excited to be traveling alone and I need the mental break. That is all, really. My brother-in-law, who married my sister, told my wife that he was in love with her. This led to a chain of horrific discoveries in our family. Yesterday, out of the blue, my brother-in-law asked my wife if she could meet him for lunch. He said there was something he needed to talk to her about. When my wife told me about his invitation, she seemed puzzled but not overly concerned. "Do you think it's about my sister?" she asked, furrowing her brow. "Maybe they're having problems, and he wants to get a woman's perspective on things." I found the whole situation odd. My brother-in-law had never reached out to my wife in this way before, but he often texted her and other family members for mundane reasons, so I didn't think much of it. After all, we were a close-knit family, and it wasn't unusual for us to support each other through tough times. "Go find out," I told her, shrugging off my initial unease. My wife agreed, deciding to meet him at a cafe near her office the next day. The next morning, as she was getting ready for work, she mentioned lunch again. "I'm still not sure what this is about," she said, a hint of worry in her voice. I reassured her, saying it was probably nothing serious. "Just listen to what he has to say, and if it's something we need to help with, we'll figure it out together," I said. It's a busy cafe, filled with the usual lunchtime crowd, and my wife feels a bit more at ease being in such a public setting. She arrives a bit early, finding a table near the window where she can keep an eye on the entrance. He arrives a few minutes later, looking more nervous than she's ever seen him. They exchange the usual pleasantries, talking about work and the kids for a few minutes. But then, as soon as their food arrives, he takes a deep breath and dives into what he really came to say. He starts by complimenting her, telling her how beautiful she looks. At first, she thinks he's just being polite, but then he keeps going. He tells her how she's always been the light in his life, how she makes him feel things he's never felt before. "It was love at first sight," he says, his voice trembling slightly. "I've loved you since the moment I first laid eyes on you. If you were mine, I would treat you like the queen you are. I'd give you everything you deserve." My wife is stunned. She stares at him, unable to believe what she's hearing. This man, my brother-in-law, married to my sister and father of their 2 kids, is pouring his heart out to her. He lays it on thick, making grand promises about how different life would be if they were together. He goes on, saying how he's been holding these feelings in for years, how he's watched her and admired her from afar, feeling more and more that they're meant to be together. She tries to interrupt, to tell him he's making a huge mistake, but he keeps talking over her, almost as if he's rehearsed this speech 1,000 times in his head. Mind you, this man has always had a friendly relationship with my wife. Our families see each other often since we're a close-knit bunch. He's always been the fun uncle to our kids, the guy who's there at every family barbecue, every holiday dinner. He does text my wife frequently, but it's always been about mundane things, the kids' schedules, family events, things like that. Nothing overly sexual, nothing that would set off any alarms. In fact, he texts and calls my mom too. They have a friendly rapport, and none of us ever thought anything of it. To us, he's always been just a good guy, someone we trust implicitly. So to hear my wife recount this to me is like a punch to the gut. My wife doesn't let him finish. She stands up, her chair scraping loudly against the floor, and walks out. She's shaking as she calls me, telling me everything that just happened. While she's on the phone with me, the texts from him start. First it's apologies. He didn't mean it, he thinks it's only infatuation. He's sorry for making her uncomfortable. But the damage is done. She leaves work early to come home and talk to me about this, her phone buzzing incessantly with his calls and messages. I tell her to answer one of his calls, to put him on speaker so I can hear. He's crying, begging her not to tell my sister. He keeps saying it was a mistake, that he misread signals, that he thought she felt the same way. Apparently, when we were together this past weekend, he thought my wife was flirting with him, that they had a moment alone in our kitchen where he felt a connection. My wife is a major ballbuster, and I suppose I can see how that can be taken as flirting, but this is beyond anything we could have imagined. He asks if she told me, and I answer yes, as I'm on speaker. Then he starts begging me too, pleading for us to keep this a secret. This went on for a while, him begging and us listening. My main question was whether he had cheated on my sister before. He swore he hadn't, swearing on his kids' lives that it was just my wife. He said I should understand that it was her, only her. At that point, I was done listening. I told him I wasn't going to do anything tonight and that I'd call him tomorrow. Now we're left with this mess, not knowing what to do next. My wife says we should drive over there right now and tell my sister, but the idea of wrecking my sister's family is killing me. Thinking about what this will do to my nieces makes me want to vomit. I know the right thing to do is to tell my sister, but I'm also thinking about my wife. It's not her fault, but there's sure to be resentment from my family. Even if my sister doesn't divorce him and they reconcile, I can't see how we'll ever be together again like we were before, if at all. This whole episode can tear my family apart. I don't give a shit about him. He tried to destroy my family, but I do care about everyone else. Update. So everyone that told me last night that I couldn't wait to tell my sister was right. A little after 12, I got a call from my sister. She sounded upset and said she had to tell me something. My heart sank as she explained that her husband, my brother-in-law, had come to her in tears, claiming my wife had tried to begin an affair with him. He spun a tale where my wife was the instigator, trying to shift the blame entirely onto her. I could hardly believe what I was hearing. I immediately told my sister that wasn't the case and assured her I would be right over. This situation needed to be addressed face to face, not over the phone. I hung up and, with a sense of urgency, called my parents. I woke my mother and father, explaining what was happening in quick clipped sentences. My father was furious. My mother sounded shocked, but resolute. They agreed to head over to my sister's house to sit with her kids, offering the support she would desperately need right now. Next, I called my younger brother. He groggily answered, confusion turning to alarm as I filled him in. He promised to come over to our place and stay with our kids, ensuring they wouldn't be left alone during this turmoil. His calm, steady presence would be a comfort to them. Meanwhile, my wife was already gathering her things, her face pale and drawn. She was dreading the confrontation, but knew it was necessary. We left the house in a hurry, the drive to my sister's place feeling longer than it actually was. The silence in the car was heavy, both of us lost in our thoughts. When we arrived, the scene was even more tense than I had imagined. My sister is out on the front porch with my brother-in-law when we get there. He looks beaten, eyes downcast, his posture slumped in defeat. He knows we have the texts and voicemails, the undeniable proof of his betrayal. I really don't know what he was hoping to accomplish by calling my sister in the middle of the night with his lies. Maybe he thought he could get ahead of the story, twist the narrative to save himself, but it was a futile effort. As we walk up to them, the tension in the air is palpable. My wife is trembling, her face a mask of controlled anger and hurt. She hands my sister her phone without a word. My sister takes it, her hands steady but her eyes burning with a mix of fury and pain. She scrolls through the texts, her expression hardening, with each one she reads. Then she listens to the voicemails, the damning evidence of his declarations, and her refusals. Before she can say anything, My brother-in-law starts sobbing. This is a man who runs into burning buildings, who faces danger daily without flinching. Seeing him like this, broken and vulnerable, is jarring. His cries are deep and guttural, raw with regret and fear. It's a scene that's almost surreal. A big tough firefighter brought to his knees by his own actions. My sister's face remains impassive, a mask of stern resolve. She's always been tough, but right now, she's unyielding. She waits for him to finish, her silence more powerful than any words. When he finally quiets down, still hiccuping with the remnants of his sobs, she speaks. "Pack a bag and go," she says, her voice cold and clear. "I can't stand to look at you." He tries to argue, to plead his case, but she's having none of it. "Stop it," she snaps, cutting through his words. "There's nothing you can say that will make this better." She turns away from him, walks over to my wife, and pulls her into a hug. It's a moment of solidarity between them, a small comfort in the middle of this nightmare. They've been friends since college, and the strength of their bond is evident. It's a relief to see that despite everything, they're standing together. This leaves me standing with my brother-in-law. He's a wreck, his face red and swollen from crying, his shoulders slumped. He looks at me, his eyes pleading for some kind of understanding or forgiveness, but I have none to offer. He tries to speak, his voice cracking, but I cut him off. "You need to leave," I say firmly. "This is your mess. You need to deal with the consequences." He nods, defeated, and slowly makes his way inside to pack his things. My sister stays with my wife, the two of them talking quietly, leaning on each other for support. The rest of the night is a blur of conversations and plans. We all rally around my sister, helping her figure out what to do next, how to protect her kids from the fallout. My sister begins questioning my wife, trying to understand why her husband thought any of this could possibly work out. He must have had some reason to believe she reciprocated his feelings. My sister insists that there hadn't been any issues in their marriage, everything had been normal. My wife is crying at this point, tears streaming down her face as she tries to make sense of the situation. "There's nothing you haven't seen," she says, her voice shaking. She hands my sister her phone again, and together they painstakingly go through every text message sent over the past 2 years. They read each one carefully, looking for any hint of inappropriate behavior, but there's nothing there. My wife was just being herself. She has a playful personality, always joking around and teasing. It's part of what makes her so lovable and approachable. My brother-in-law has a similar sense of humor, and they've always teased each other in a lighthearted, harmless way. She does the same with my mom and my younger brother. It's just how she interacts with people. The only incident my wife can think of that might have been misconstrued happened this past weekend. She recounts it, trying to pinpoint where things went wrong. They were all together at our place, and she and my brother-in-law both reached for the fridge at the same time. They playfully jostled for who would get there first, laughing as they did so. He let her win, but then he reached around her waist to grab a beer, moving his hand slowly. She admits that in that moment, the way he did it felt a little inappropriate. It was a fleeting feeling, and she brushed it off, not wanting to make a big deal out of it. She wonders now if her silence gave him some misguided hope. My sister listens, her expression softening. She doesn't blame my wife for any of this. She knows her well enough to understand that her playful nature isn't an invitation for anything more. "It's not your fault," she reassures her, and my wife nods, though the guilt still lingers. As they finish reading through the messages, it's clear there was never any mutual attraction, no hidden signals or secret flirtations. My wife was just being herself, and my brother-in-law took that, and twisted it into something it wasn't. The realization that this misunderstanding has caused so much pain is almost too much to bear, but at least, for now, my sister's belief in my wife remains intact. So then, my sister starts going through his MacBook to see what else she doesn't know about. She's angry and frantic at this point, her hands shaking as she types. She guesses the password, and on the third try, she's in. With a deep breath, she starts searching through his files, looking for anything that might shed more light on this nightmare. It doesn't take long before she finds something disturbing. There, buried in a folder labeled innocuously, are a lot of pictures of my wife. They date back years, and what's more unsettling is that they're always isolated shots, just her, never in group settings or candid family moments. My sister clicks through them, her anger turning into a cold, creeping horror. One set of photos stands out. A few years ago, we went on a couple's trip to the Caribbean. It was a rare vacation without the kids, and my wife, feeling more relaxed in the adults-only environment, had worn a bikini. She usually doesn't, preferring more modest swimwear, but this time she had felt comfortable enough to do so. There were probably 50 pictures of her in that bikini, each one taken without her knowledge. My sister's face pales as she scrolls through them. It's clear he's been secretly snapping these photos for years, collecting them obsessively. The realization that he's been harboring this fixation, lurking in the shadows of family events, sends a shiver down her spine. Does this now enter restraining order territory? She wonders aloud, her voice barely above a whisper. This has taken a creepy turn, far beyond what any of us had imagined. The boundary between inappropriate and outright disturbing has been crossed. She calls us over, showing us the pictures. My wife gasps, her hand flying to her mouth in shock. She had no idea he was doing this, no inkling of his obsession. My sister, her anger now tempered by a deep sense of betrayal, starts talking about next steps. Legal action, protection for her kids, and a restraining order. All possibilities that need to be considered now. We're all reeling from this new discovery. The man we thought we knew, who we trusted as a husband, a father, and a brother-in-law, has shown a side of himself that's dark and disturbing. It's not just a matter of infatuation anymore, it's something far more insidious. Unfortunately, the mess continues. My sister agreed to talk to her husband last night and let him explain himself. She was determined to get the full story and decided to involve my wife directly to ensure there would be no lying or half-truths. They set up a FaceTime call with my wife, and I listened in off camera, my heart pounding with a mix of anger and dread. My sister, ever thorough, recorded the entire conversation for good measure. As soon as the call began, the tension was palpable. My brother-in-law looked exhausted, his eyes red-rimmed and swollen from crying. He started hesitantly, his voice shaky, but as he spoke, the truth began to pour out, and the story unfolded in a way none of us had fully anticipated. He admitted he's been obsessed with my wife for years. It started the day I met her, he confessed, his voice barely above a whisper. He went on to explain that it was during one of those early gatherings where my sister, eager to introduce her new boyfriend to her friends, had brought him along. My wife and I were dating at the time, but he had met her before he met me. At first, he thought his feelings were purely physical, an innocent crush that he could brush aside. But as time went on and he spent more time around her, he realized it was more than that. He became fixated on her personality, her laughter, the way she interacted with everyone around her. He described moments where he found himself watching her, captivated by her presence, even as she was just being herself, playful and kind. He detailed how he had tried to suppress these feelings, convincing himself that they were harmless. But over time, his obsession grew. He started finding ways to be near her more often, volunteering to help with family events, making excuses to text her about trivial things. It was a slow, insidious process that eventually led to the point where he felt compelled to confess his feelings, deluding himself into believing she might feel the same way. My sister listened, her face a mask of controlled rage and heartbreak. She didn't interrupt him, letting him dig his own grave with each word. My wife, on the other hand, was visibly shaken. Hearing how long this had been going on, how deeply his obsession ran, was almost too much for her to bear. When he finished, there was a heavy silence. My sister finally spoke, her voice icy and measured. "What made you think that my wife would leave me for you?" she asked, her eyes boring into his. He stammered, struggling to find the right words. He mentioned the supposed mutual attraction, the moments he had misinterpreted as signs of her reciprocation. My wife and sister exploded at that point, their pent-up anger and frustration spilling over. There was a lot of cussing, a lot of screaming, the raw emotion of betrayal and hurt coming to the forefront. My wife hung up the call, her hands trembling, her face pale. She was concerned for me, for us, assuring me repeatedly that the attraction was one-sided. I believed her. I always had. Even if she did find him physically attractive at some point, I knew she would never act on it. She's serious about trust and fidelity, something she made clear early on in our relationship. This whole ordeal was a twisted fantasy of my brother-in-law's, a dangerous delusion that had nearly torn our family apart. The tension that had been building up during the call finally erupted into a storm of cussing and screaming. My wife's voice was a mix of fury and hurt, while my sister's was steely and unforgiving. The barrage of emotions was overwhelming, the air thick with betrayal and disbelief. The phone call abruptly ended when my wife, shaking and distraught, hung up because she was concerned for me. She turned to me, her eyes wide with fear and confusion. "It was one-sided," she assured me, her voice trembling. "I never thought it wasn't," I replied, trying to soothe her. Even if she did find him physically attractive at some point, I knew she would never act on it. She's just not that type of person. Early on in our relationship, there was a moment that encapsulated her stance on trust and fidelity perfectly. I remember watching her one morning as she was dressing, admiring her without saying a word. She noticed, gave me a teasing smile and asked if I liked what I saw. But then her expression turned serious, almost cold. "Never fuck up," she said, her tone leaving no room for misunderstanding. "Or you'll never see this again." She meant every word. My wife is serious about trust. Once it's broken, it's almost impossible to mend. As I sat there, replaying the chaotic scene in my mind, I couldn't help but reflect on my brother-in-law. I knew he was a little cocky, always walking with a certain swagger, but my God, I never knew he thought so highly of himself to believe he could pull off something like this. His delusions of grandeur were staggering, completely detached from reality. I talked to my sister later on, once the initial shock had started to wear off and we could speak more calmly. She was resolute, determined to protect her children from the fallout of her husband's actions. She told me she would be contacting a lawyer first thing Monday morning to see what steps she could take to limit his exposure to their kids. She wanted to ensure that they were shielded from as much of this mess as possible. As far as I'm concerned, he's detached from reality, she said, her voice steely with resolve. Her concern was no longer about saving her marriage but about safeguarding her children and maintaining a semblance of stability for them. Anyway, my brother-in-law returned home yesterday, not because my sister wants him back but because she can't legally stop him. Despite the turmoil and the clear betrayal, he has the right to be in the house until the legal proceedings move forward. The atmosphere is tense and uncomfortable, filled with unspoken words and palpable resentment. They are done, and I think he realizes that now. There's a hollow look in his eyes, as if he understands that any hope he had of salvaging their marriage is gone. The lawyer tells my sister that since my brother-in-law's behavior over the past few days has been documented, there is a good chance she will be granted full custody of the kids. The texts, voicemails, and the disturbing cache of photos all paint a clear picture of his obsession and instability. He doesn't seem to even want to fight her on that. It's as if he knows he's lost everything and is too weary to put up a battle. My sister will be fine. She's stronger than she looks, and any love she had for him is gone. She moves through the house with a determined air, her focus now entirely on her children and their future. She doesn't seem to be broken up about it. Rather, she looks like someone who's finally seen the truth and is ready to move forward. The kids don't know what happened yet. They sense something is wrong. Kids always do. But they don't know the details. My brother-in-law was never around much anyway when the kids were home. He often slept at the fire station, pulling double shifts and overtime. His absence was a constant in their lives, a silent but ever-present gap that they had grown used to. But it is certain to be hard on them once they know what's going to happen. The stability of their home, the presence of both parents, even if it was fractured, will change. My sister is prepared for this. She's already spoken to a child psychologist to help them navigate the inevitable questions and emotions that will arise. She's ready to be both mother and father, to provide them with the love and support they'll need. As for my brother-in-law, he stays in the guest room, a silent figure in a house that no longer feels like his home. He seems resigned to his fate, going through the motions but devoid of any real fight. It's a sad, pitiful sight, but my sympathy is limited. Some of my friends have said that there must be more women, that someone as obsessive as my brother-in-law couldn't have fixated on just one person. But as far as we can tell, there hasn't been anyone else. It's really just the obsession with my wife. His fixation on her has been singular and intense, leaving no room for anyone else. After everything came to light, my wife blocked his phone number, trying to create some distance and protect herself from his unwanted advances. But on the same night he returned home, he sent my wife an email from an account he had just made. It started with a seemingly sincere apology, but it quickly took a turn into something much darker. He began by saying he never got to finish at the restaurant that day, implying there was more he needed to confess. Then he launched into paragraphs and paragraphs about all the things he loves about my wife. He detailed the desperation he felt, the overwhelming emotions that had driven him to act so irrationally. He recounted every little detail he admired about her, her smile, her laugh, the way she interacted with others. It was unsettling, to say the least, to see his obsession laid out so starkly. He mentioned their supposed mutual attraction again, insisting that there was a palpable sexual tension between them that he had always felt. He was delusional, mistaking her friendly, playful nature for something more. He painted a picture of a connection that existed only in his mind, a fantasy that he had convinced himself was real. The email ended with a rather large section about me. Let's just say I didn't know he had such a low opinion of me. He was quite certain that I was not satisfying my wife properly. He criticized everything from my appearance to my demeanor, implying that I was somehow unworthy of her. His words were meant to undermine me, to sow seeds of doubt and insecurity. Reading the email was a gut punch. It was clear that his obsession with my wife had twisted his perceptions and fueled his disdain for me. He saw me as an obstacle, someone unworthy of the woman he had placed on a pedestal. But instead of feeling threatened, it only solidified my resolve to protect my wife, and my family, from his delusions. We forwarded the email to my sister and her lawyer. It was more evidence of his unstable state of mind, Another piece of the puzzle that showed just how far gone he was. This email, with its mix of apology, obsession and vitriol, might be enough to get him removed from the house permanently. For now, my wife and I are taking it one day at a time. The support from our friends and family has been invaluable, helping us navigate this surreal and painful situation. Finally, my wife isn't doing great, but she is improving each day. She does feel guilty for being too comfortable around my brother-in-law. Normally, she is very careful about setting boundaries with other men. In case it wasn't clear, my wife is quite stunning and receives a lot of male attention. However, she felt safe around my brother-in-law because he was family, and she never thought he would cross any lines. Fortunately, she and my sister are on good terms, and there doesn't seem to be any resentment, which is a relief. We will all be okay, but it will take time. Thank you to everyone who commented and offered their support. My primary concern throughout this was my sister and her children. The impact of my brother-in-law's actions on their lives is immense. Ensuring their protection and emotional well-being became our priority. Children, especially, need shielding from such toxic situations to maintain their sense of security and normalcy. When faced with such a situation, it's essential to act quickly and decisively. We didn't hesitate to gather evidence, confront the issue, and involve legal help to ensure the safety and well-being of everyone involved. Procrastination or denial could have led to further harm. What do you think about this story? Please share your comments down below. Thank you for listening to Vibe Tales. I've been taking care of my wife's best friend's kid. I'm exhausted, so I told my wife that I'm tired of raising a kid that is not mine. Am I the A? I, 31 male, am married to my wife Amber, 30 female, and we have a daughter, Emma, 7 female. The problem is my wife's best friend Jennifer has a daughter named Harper, 7 female. Harper's dad is a lazy sack of crap and refuses to do anything with his daughter. He is the type of guy that brags about how he never changed a diaper. To elaborate, Harper's dad epitomizes the worst kind of uninvolved parenting. While most fathers would cherish the opportunity to bond with their children, he prides himself on his detachment. His lack of participation isn't limited to diaper changes, it extends to every aspect of Harper's upbringing. He doesn't attend her school events, help with homework, or show any interest in her hobbies. His weekends are spent drinking and watching sports, completely ignoring Harper's need for a father figure. Jennifer, despite her best efforts, struggles to fill the void left by Harper's dad. She juggles work, household responsibilities, and trying to be both mother and father to Harper. The emotional and financial burden is immense, and it's clear that Jennifer is often exhausted and overwhelmed. This situation has led Jennifer and Harper to spend most weekends at our house while Harper's dad is drinking and watching sports all weekend. Amber and Jennifer have been best friends for years, and Amber feels a strong sense of duty to support Jennifer and Harper. However, this dynamic has created a unique set of challenges for me. Every Saturday, the time I had hoped to dedicate exclusively to Emma is now shared with Harper. It's not that I don't care for Harper, but the situation feels unfair, especially when Harper's own father should be stepping up. My frustration boils over when I think about how Harper's dad's neglect impacts not only Jennifer and Harper but also my family. It's disheartening to see such a blatant disregard for parental responsibilities. His behavior isn't just lazy, it's irresponsible and selfish. He seems content to let others pick up his slack, while he remains in his bubble of indifference. The resentment builds as I find myself taking on roles that Harper's dad should fulfill. Whether it's teaching the girls to ride bikes, taking them to dance class, or simply being a present and attentive father figure, these responsibilities weigh heavily on me. It's not Harper's fault, and I know that, but the constant intrusion on my father-daughter time with Emma leaves me feeling increasingly resentful. What's worse is that Harper's dad's attitude hasn't changed, despite numerous opportunities for him to step up. He remains steadfast in his neglect, leaving Jennifer and Harper to fend for themselves. This ongoing neglect not only affects Harper's emotional well-being but also places an undue burden on Jennifer, who is left to shoulder the parental responsibilities alone. It's a cycle of frustration and disappointment that affects everyone involved. In conclusion, while my wife and I strive to support Jennifer and Harper, the situation with Harper's dad remains a significant source of tension. His failure to be a responsible parent impacts not only his own family but also ours, as we find ourselves compensating for his shortcomings. Mother's Day was the last straw. That Saturday morning I took both Emma and Harper to their dance class. Amber and I pay for both girls' classes because Harper's dad, the deadbeat, won't contribute a cent. This has always been a sore point for me, but I've tolerated it for the sake of peace. However, this Mother's Day pushed me over the edge. After dance class, Emma asked if we could stop to get something for her mom for Mother's Day. I agreed, wanting to make the day special for Amber. But as soon as Harper heard this, she asked if we could also get something for her mom, Jennifer. Instantly, a wave of frustration washed over me. Why was it falling on me to buy a Mother's Day gift for someone else's wife? That's her dad's responsibility, not mine. As we drove home, I couldn't shake off the anger bubbling inside me. Here I was, trying to do something nice for Amber, and it turned into another chore imposed by Harper's dad's neglect. I couldn't help but think about all the times I've had to step in for him. Whether it's dance class fees or buying Mother's Day gifts, his absence is constantly felt. It's not just about the money, it's about the principle. This man is shirking his duties, and I'm left picking up the pieces. A few days later, after Mother's Day had passed, I decided it was time to speak up. I didn't want to ruin the holiday for Amber, so I waited until the right moment. When I finally broached the subject with her, I tried to be as calm and rational as possible. I told her that I was tired of raising Harper and that her real father needed to step up. I expressed how it was taking away precious time I wanted to spend with Emma. It's not that I don't care about Harper, but the constant burden was becoming too much. Amber didn't take it well. She insisted that Jennifer is her best friend and that we need to be there for Harper. I understand her perspective, but it felt like my concerns were being dismissed. The conversation quickly turned heated, and Amber ended up not speaking to me. She's been sleeping in the guest bedroom ever since. The silence in our home is deafening. I didn't want to cause a rift, but I felt like I had no choice but to voice my frustration. It's hard enough balancing work and family life without the added pressure of compensating for Harper's dad's negligence. I hoped that Amber would understand where I was coming from, but instead, it feels like she's chosen Jennifer's needs over mine. This situation has left me feeling isolated and misunderstood. I love Amber and I want to support her, but I also need her to see how this is affecting me and our family. I'm at a loss for how to move forward. Just wanted to add some additional info. Emma and Harper are best friends. Their bond is incredibly strong, and they do almost everything together. Seeing them so close is heartwarming, but it also complicates things. Because of their friendship, Harper is almost always at our house, especially on weekends. It was my idea to spend Saturdays with Emma. I work long hours during the week and don't get to see her as much as I'd like. Saturdays were supposed to be our special time together, a chance for me to reconnect with my daughter and create lasting memories. I also wanted to give Amber a bit of a break, some time for herself to relax and recharge. However, this plan often gets overshadowed by the presence of Harper. We pay for both girls' activities because Jennifer's husband, the deadbeat, thinks it's a waste of money to pay for dance class. Jennifer can't afford to pay by herself, so we cover the costs for Harper as well. It's frustrating because this isn't our responsibility, but we do it to ensure Harper doesn't miss out on opportunities she deserves. Jennifer and Harper do things with Amber and Emma once or twice a week during the weeknights. These outings help strengthen their bond and provide some support to Jennifer, who is struggling to manage everything on her own. While I understand the importance of these interactions, it adds to the ongoing issue of Harper's father's neglect. He should be the one stepping up and providing for his daughter, not relying on us to fill in the gaps. Update 1. Things at home were much worse than I was aware of for Jennifer, and my wife had only recently found out how bad things were. Jennifer had been dealing with a lot more than I had imagined. Her husband's neglect and emotional absence were just the tip of the iceberg. The situation was dire, and Jennifer was struggling to keep it all together for Harper's sake. Mother's Day was the straw that broke the camel's back for Jennifer as well. She grew up in a family that believed you must stay together for the kids, no matter what. But when Harper came to me for a Mother's Day gift, Jennifer had a revelation. She realized that her daughter did not see her biological father as a real dad. This moment was pivotal. It was a harsh reality check for Jennifer, making her see that staying with her husband was doing more harm than good. It was time for her to get out. Jennifer came to my wife to ask for help leaving because she had no family in the area and lacked the financial resources to leave on her own. She was desperate and had nowhere else to turn. Jennifer confided in Amber, revealing the true extent of her struggles. She was trapped in a toxic and neglectful environment, and the situation had reached a breaking point. Amber, always the compassionate friend, was deeply moved by Jennifer's plight. She knew that Jennifer needed support and a safe place to stay. So, the night my wife was going to ask me if we could help Jennifer is when I, completely unaware of the depth of Jennifer's situation, told her I was tired of raising someone else's kid. My frustration with Harper's father's negligence had built up, and I vented to Amber without realizing the full picture. That's what caused Amber's strong reaction. The Saturday after our initial argument, Jennifer did not come over and Emma went to her grandparents'. This break from the usual routine gave Amber and me a chance to have a long, uninterrupted discussion about what was really going on. Amber shared everything she had learned about Jennifer's dire circumstances. The gravity of her situation hit me hard. It wasn't just about Harper's father being a deadbeat. Jennifer was in a crisis and needed our help more than ever. Hearing the full story, I felt a deep sense of regret for my earlier outburst. Jennifer wasn't just dealing with an uninvolved partner. She was facing a serious crisis with no support system in place. Her plea to Amber wasn't just a casual ask for help, it was a desperate cry for assistance from someone she trusted. Amber's explanation made me see the situation from a different perspective. Jennifer and Harper needed more than just occasional help. They needed a stable, safe environment where they could start rebuilding their lives. My initial frustration seemed trivial in comparison to the urgency of Jennifer's need for a lifeline. With this newfound understanding, Amber and I decided to open our home to Jennifer and Harper. It was clear that they had nowhere else to go, and turning them away was not an option. Our focus shifted from the inconvenience of the situation to the necessity of providing support for someone in genuine need. Amber and I decided that Jennifer and Harper could stay with us for the time being. My problem was never with those two. It was that I had to take over for the deadbeat. Knowing the full context, I couldn't turn my back on them. They needed us. When we told Emma about this, she was super happy that her best friend was staying with her. We had a conversation with her, explaining that if she wanted to have time with either parent without Harper, she just needed to let us know. We assured her that we didn't want her to feel left out of anything. Last weekend, with the help of Hall and some friends, we got all of Jennifer's and Harper's stuff and moved it into our house. The good thing is we have a 4-bedroom house, so everyone gets a bedroom. The bad news is my wife's office moved to the basement, which isn't ideal but necessary under the circumstances. Wish me luck, we shall see how this goes. This situation is far from easy, but knowing the full story has given me a new perspective. We're doing the right thing by helping Jennifer and Harper, and hopefully, we'll come out of this stronger as a family. Update 2. Jen and Harper are still living with us. As I mentioned before, Jen did not make that much money. She worked as a phlebotomist for our local health network, which didn't pay well enough to support herself and Harper independently. Despite her dedication and hard work, the financial strain was a constant burden. The good news is that with the current nursing shortage, the health network introduced a program that pays for employees to go to nursing school. This opportunity was a lifeline for Jen. She was able to start the program at the end of August. It was a significant step forward for her, offering a chance to improve her financial situation and secure a better future for herself and Harper. However, the program came with its own set of challenges. It's an 18-month intensive course, and participants are only allowed to work 20 hours a week while enrolled. This meant that Jen's already tight finances would be stretched even thinner during this period. She would need to juggle studying, limited work hours, and caring for Harper, all while living with us. The arrangement we came to was that once Jen graduates, she will move out. This plan gave her a clear goal to work towards and provided a timeline for us as well. It's a challenging path, but the end result would be worth it. Jen's graduation is expected to be next May, which feels both far away and just around the corner. In the meantime, our household dynamics have to adapt to accommodate Jen's rigorous schedule. She spends most of her time either studying or working her reduced hours. It's a demanding routine, but she's incredibly determined and focused on making it through the program. The support system we provide is crucial, giving her the stability and peace of mind she needs to concentrate on her studies. We've all made adjustments to help Jen succeed. Amber and I take on additional responsibilities to ensure that Harper's needs are met and that Jen has the space and time to study. It's a team effort, and while it's not always easy, we all understand the importance of what Jen is working towards. The prospect of Jen becoming a nurse is a beacon of hope. It promises a better future for her and Harper, free from the financial insecurities that have plagued them. While the present situation is tough, the light at the end of the tunnel keeps us all motivated. We look forward to celebrating her graduation and the new opportunities it will bring for her family. In the meantime, the divorce with deadbeat is still ongoing. Once he found out he was going to have to pay child support, he tried every dirty, nasty trick he could think of. It's been a nightmare for Jennifer, who already has enough on her plate with nursing school and caring for Harper. Deadbeat's tactics have ranged from delaying court proceedings to making false accusations against Jennifer. He's done everything he can to avoid his financial responsibilities, dragging out the process as long as possible. Each new trick he pulls seems designed to make Jennifer's life more difficult and stressful. For example, he's constantly failing to show up for court dates, forcing them to be rescheduled and prolonging the whole ordeal. He's also tried to claim that Jennifer is an unfit mother, despite having no evidence to back up his accusations. These claims are baseless, but they add emotional strain and complicate the legal proceedings. Every time Jennifer thinks she's made progress, deadbeat throws another wrench into the works. It's exhausting and demoralizing, but she remains determined to see it through. She knows that getting the divorce finalized and securing child support is crucial for Harper's well-being and their future stability. The legal fees are piling up and the financial strain is intense, especially with Jennifer's reduced work hours due to nursing school. We do our best to support her emotionally and financially, but it's a heavy burden. The uncertainty of not knowing when the divorce will be finalized adds to the stress. Despite the challenges, Jennifer remains resolute. She's focused on her goals, completing nursing school, securing a stable income, and ensuring a better life for Harper. It's a difficult road, but she's not facing it alone. We're here to help her navigate the twists and turns of this prolonged and bitter divorce battle. It's a frustrating situation for all of us. The sooner the divorce is finalized, the sooner Jennifer and Harper can move forward without the shadow of deadbeat looming over them. My wife is doing good. She is happy she is helping her best friend. However, having 5 people in the house is a lot more work than having 3. Since she works from home, the pre- and post-school work often falls on her. Despite the added workload, Amber remains positive and dedicated to making this arrangement work for everyone. Emma and Harper are still best friends, and their bond is as strong as ever. Shockingly, Harper is doing much better in this environment than before. The stability and support she receives here have had a noticeable positive impact on her. They don't do everything together anymore, which has allowed both girls to explore their individual interests. Harper quit dance class, but she started with soccer, which she really enjoys. I think knowing that she will get fatherly attention no matter what she is doing has given her some freedom to pursue other interests. It's heartwarming to see her confidence grow as she finds new activities that she loves. Interestingly, Harper has turned into my Lego buddy. Emma never had any interest in Legos, but Harper and I have done some nice sets together. This has become a special bonding activity for us. Building Legos not only provides a fun pastime, but also gives Harper the fatherly attention she has been missing. It's rewarding to see her enthusiasm and creativity flourish through our Lego projects. Amber and I work hard to balance our responsibilities and ensure that both Emma and Harper feel supported and loved. While the dynamics of our household have certainly changed, we're adapting and finding new ways to connect and spend quality time together. It's not always easy, but seeing the positive impact on Harper and the strong friendship between the girls makes it all worthwhile. Emma and I still have our daddy-daughter dates on the weekend. I still take her to dance class, and she recently started taking fencing classes. Watching her learn to fence has been both exciting and a little intimidating. I don't know if I should be proud or scared that she could defeat me in a sword fight one day. It's incredible to see her develop new skills and interests, and our time together remains special and cherished. A year later, I think I am doing better. Having a plan with a timetable for Jen and Harper has relieved a lot of stress from my life. Knowing that there is an end goal in sight helps me manage the day-to-day challenges more effectively. The fact that I also don't have to see deadbeat has been a significant relief. His absence from our lives has removed a source of constant tension and frustration. I also try to take a few hours a month for myself to do my hobbies. These moments of me time are crucial for my mental well-being and help me recharge. Whether it's working on a personal project or just relaxing, these breaks are essential in maintaining my balance. The bad part is I had thought that I was done with the portion of my life where I had roommates. Adjusting to having more people in the house has been challenging. While we all get along and support each other, the lack of privacy and the constant activity can be overwhelming at times. It will be a relief when Jen either gets her nursing job and/or secures child support, so that Amber and I can stop footing the bill for so much. Despite the challenges, there have been many joyful moments. Watching Harper flourish in a supportive environment, seeing Emma and Harper's friendship grow, and even building Lego sets together, these small moments of happiness are precious. They remind me to appreciate the good amidst the difficult. In the midst of supporting others, I learned the importance of self-care. Taking time for my hobbies and personal interests has been crucial for maintaining my mental and emotional well-being. You can't pour from an empty cup. Taking care of myself enables me to better support my family.